Hello, Pajabori. It is Wacky Wednesday. That means you get a video from me instead of a live read aloud. But today I am going to read you a really fun story. This is called Cindy Ellen, and it is a Western version of Cinderella. So I want you to be thinking how this is similar and different to the other Cinderellas that you've heard before. And also, what characteristics of a fairy tale do we see in this? Remember, we often see magic, happily ever after, an evil person, personification, which remember is talking animals or giving human qualities to an animal or even an object. So see what you see in this story. Cindy Ellen. Once there was a rancher who married for his second wife the orneriest woman of the west of Mississippi. She was meaner than a rattlesnake, and she had 2 daughters who were the spitting image of her. The rancher also had a daughter who was just as sweet and gentle as she could be. Her name was Cindy Ellen. Cindy was a pretty good cowgirl, too. Riding her little gray horse, she wrangled and roped and galloped and loped with the best buckaroos on the range. But as soon as the wedding was over, that snaky old stepmother began to pick on poor Cindy Ellen. She was so good, she made her stepsisters look bad. So her stepmother made her do all the dirty work around the ranch. "Mend those fences, tend those cows," she would yell, "and shovel out that corral." The stepsisters never did take a lick of work all day, but Cindy didn't dare complain to her daddy because his new wife was in charge. When her chores were done, the poor girl used to sit down and rest among the ashes and cinders at the edge of the fireplace, so her older stepsister nicknamed her Cinderbottom. The younger sister called her Sanderella, but underneath her old dirty clothes, Cindy Ellen was still as pretty as a peach. Then one day, the biggest cattle king for miles around invited all of his neighbors for a 2-day celebration. First a wild and woolly rodeo, and then a square dance, a real Western fandango. Cindy's stepsisters puffed up like 2 turkey gobblers. Even though they couldn't ride, they decided to gussy themselves up to fit to kill and enter the rodeo. Nice, patient Cindy-Ella ironed their frilly shirts and frazzled their hairs for them. "Don't you wish you could go too?" Cinderbottom sneered to the older sister. "Aw, you're just poking fun at me," said Cindy sadly. "You're right," laughed the younger sister. "Nobody could tell you from a cloud of dust, Cinderella." They're just as mean in the real book. As soon as they were gone, poor Cindy Ellen broke down and cried. Then suddenly she heard a noise outside, almost like gunfire, but not quite. It wasn't like bang, bang. It was more like bing, bing. And there stood an old lady with a golden pistol still smoking in her hand. "Who are you?" gasped Cindy Ellen. "Say hello to your fairy godmother, Sugarfoot," the old lady said. She twirled the pistol, slapped it back into its holster, and took a good hard look at Cindy. "What's the matter with you, honey? You're as down and dirty as a floppy-eared hound dog. Stand up straight. Dust yourself off." "I want to go to the rodeo," sobbed Cindy Ellen. "Can you help?" "Maybe see, maybe no," said her fairy godmother. "Magic is plumb worthless. What you need first is some gravel in your gizzard. Great guts! Stop that tomfool blubbering and let's get busy. Time's a-wastin'." She's a fun fairy godmother. She reached for her golden 6-gun and Cindy yelled, "Don't shoot!" But the godmother already fired straight up in the air. Bing, ping! Glittery Sparkles floated down from the sky and sprinkled Cindy all over with fairy dust. Instantly, her heart was filled with strength and happiness, and her rags turned into the finest riding clothes from the East. A creamy white Stinson hat crowned her shining hair, golden buckskin chaps encircled her legs, and a pretty little pair of cowboy boots hugged her feet like gloves. Buckled to the heel of each boot was a spur that shot out rays of fiery light. Those spurs were set with diamonds as big as sugar lumps. "Now," said her fairy godmother, "where's that horse of yours?" She fired her magic pistol into the air. Zing! And Cindy's little gray horse became a little silver horse with a soft, sparkling coat. His hoofs glittered as he pawed the ground. "Hit the trail, honey," the old lady said. "Remember, there ain't no horse that can't be rode, and there ain't no man that can't be throwed. And one more thing, get home before midnight, gal, or you'll be sorry." When Cindy Ellen pulled up to the rodeo, everybody turned and stared at the dazzling stranger on the silver horse. The rich rancher's son, a rodeo champion by the name of Joe Prince, came forward wearing the biggest belt buckle you ever saw and swept his hat off his head. "Pleased to meet you, ma'am," he said. "Likewise," said Cindy. Uh-oh, stepsisters. Just then, Cindy's older stepsister rode a bucking bronco into the arena, and before she could say, "Oopsie daisy," that wrinkled his spine, boiled over, and sent her chasing clouds way up in the sky, and she bit the dust. Next came the second stepsister, but she couldn't ride a rail fence in a stiff breeze, and pretty soon she was eating gravel just like her sister. Cindy Ellen helped her stepsisters up and brushed them off, but they never even recognized her. Then she remembered her godmother's gift, and she gave Joe Prince a big daredevil grin. "My turn," she said. Cindy Ellen climbed aboard a salty bronc with a belly full of bed springs, a real rip snorter. She touched him with her diamond spurs, and first he tried to crow hop, and then cat-backed and sunfished and windmilled and jackknifed. But Cindy stuck to the saddle like a postage stamp. So look at her. No matter all the crazy tricks, she stays on. "Ride him, cowgirl!" cried the crowd, and Cindy Ellen was the winner with every one of her curls in place. Next, with a figure eight, a butterfly, and a wedding ring, she won the trick roping event. And then she and her little horse really burned the breeze. They kicked like jackrabbits off the trail. They left their shadows 20 miles behind, and they won the horse race, and they even beat Joe Prince. But Joe didn't even seem to care. He rode over to Cindy Ellen up at 1:45 when she suddenly recalled her godmother's warning and went galloping home. By the time she got there, her fine duds had shriveled into sorry rags again. But she still had plenty to be happy about. After a while, her stepsisters hobbled in from the rodeo. "Ha! You missed the cowgirl champion," the older sister sneered. "Nobody knows her name or where she disappeared to." "And that old Joe Prince is eating his heart out," said the younger one. "I bet she comes to the square dance tomorrow night," said Cindy with her daredevil grin. The next evening, her stepsisters got all dressed up like a sore thumb and strutted away to the dance, leaving Cindy Ellen all alone. But not for long. "What's that?" She peeked out the window. It looked like a cross between a comet and a dust storm. It sounded like silver bells mixed with dynamite. "Let's get crackin', sweet pea," shouted her fairy godmother. "You're late. Wrestle me up the biggest, dustiest, lumpiest squash you can find, and zingo!" the squash became a stagecoach. All of these words, zing, boom, remember those are called onomatopoeia, they are sound words. Quick as a wink, she turned cactus mice into 6 dappled horses and a fat pack rat into a stagecoach driver and a rough, tough horned toad into a stagecoach guard riding shotgun by the driver. But what about my ugly clothes? Asked Cindy. The old lady answered with a blast of fairy dust that melted into a dress that shone like the sun, the moon, and the stars together. The skirt floated over petticoats and soft and puffy summer clouds. A rainbow of jewels glowed around her neck, and the little diamond spurs sparkled once more on her boot heels. "Thank you, ma'am," she cried. The fairy godmother blew the smoke from her pistol, put it up, and dusted off her hands. "Remember, Miss Cindy, pretty is as pretty does. Magic can backfire. Be back at midnight." When Cindy arrived at the Cattle King's swear dance, the fiddlers were tuning up for a toe-tapping jamboree. Joe Prince reached for Cindy's hand the instant he laid eyes on her. "Buckle your partners, folks, and tell them to hang on. Let's shake our hooves like lightning until the early dawn." And Cindy answered, "Hurry up, cowboy. Let's do-si-do." Hand over hand, heel over heel, Joe and Cindy danced the daisy chain. They danced the night away. And Joe said, "Swing these girls till the middle of the night." Twirling, swirling, Cindy lost track of time until all at once she heard the clock begin to strike 12. She got out of there lickety-split. "Whoa!" yelled Joe, hot on her heels, but he couldn't catch her. One of the diamond spurs fell off Cindy's boot as she ran, and Joe picked it up and dusted it off. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, not a particle remained of Cindy's gorgeous outfit except for a second diamond spur, which she tucked away in her hip pocket. Pretty soon, word got out that the champion cowgirl was also a wanted woman. She'd left Joe Prince so lovelorn that he was tracking her throughout the territory, and he vowed to marry the woman whose boot lifted the little diamond spur. He tried it on all these girls, but it didn't fit any of them. At last he came riding up to Cindy's father's place. "Go shovel out the stable," hissed the stepmother, and Cindy obeyed. First, Joe tried the diamond spur on the young stepsister, but no matter how he stretched the straps, her hoof was too big. The older sister crushed her feet into the little tiny boots. So just for an instant, the spur almost fit. But then her boots split open and her toes popped out, and Joe muttered, "Sorry," and headed for the door. "My turn," said a voice that stopped him in his tracks. It was Cindy Ellen, and although her mean stepsisters almost died laughing, Joe let Cindy have her chance fair and square, and when he put the diamond spur on her dirty little boot, it fit perfectly. And then she pulled out the second diamond spur and buckled it onto her other boot. And at that very moment, Cindy's little horse gave a whine, and everyone heard a noise like, "Wingo, wango, kazing! Let her rip!" shouted Cindy Ellen's fairy godmother, carrying her golden pistol. "Hold your fire," yelled Joe Prince. But glistening sparks of fairy dust were already sprinkling down everywhere, and they turned Cindy's clothes from cotton to satin, and Cindy's horse began to sparkle. "Yee-haw!" yelled the fairy godmother. So Cindy Ellen and Joe Prince got married and lived happily ever after in a ranch house so full of love and rodeo trophies that Cindy's family moved to town, where both stepsisters married city slickers, and Cindy's little horse kept his sparkling coat and his glittering hooves until the end of his days. The end. I hope you enjoyed your story today. Please make sure to fill out the questions. What did you see from the story, and what point of view was it told from? Love you, sweet children.